The 90s gave us a lot of unforgettable sci-fi. It was a time when anything felt possible, even if the CGI was a little wobbly and the budgets were a little stretched. But for every X-Files or Star Trek Voyager, there were a dozen shows that slipped through the cracks. Some were brilliant, some were brilliantly bizarre, and they all deserve a second look. So in this video, we're shining a light on some of these forgotten gems of 90s sci-fi. Shows that took big swings, created wild worlds, and deserve way more love than they got. And just to keep things organized, we're listing everything in chronological order. Jupiter Moon. Imagine a soap opera, but set on a spaceship orbiting Jupiter. That's Jupiter Moon for you. This British sci-fi series followed the lives of students aboard the Ilia, a massive university spaceship stationed near Jupiter's moon, Callisto. There were relationships, betrayals, mysteries, all the soapy drama you'd expect, but with zero gravity and spacesuits thrown into the mix. It was an ambitious idea, especially for early 90s sci-fi, so the execution sometimes wobbled between charmingly earnest and delightfully cheesy. But it's still a fascinating deep cut if you're into sci-fi storytelling with a side of space melodrama. Babylon 5. Babylon 5 wasn't just a sci-fi show, it was a 5-year epic with an end planned from the start. Set on a massive space station that served as a neutral ground for humans and aliens, Babylon 5 tackled politics, war, diplomacy, and big philosophical questions. The show had some seriously impressive world building, complete with epic story arcs and a sprawling universe full of morally complex characters. Sure, the CGI looks a little crunchy by today's standards, but the ambition was massive and the execution was great. And if you want more, there's a short-lived spin-off called Crusade, which continued the saga with a new crew hunting for a cure to a deadly plague. It didn't last long, but it's a cool companion piece for B5 fans. seaQuest DSV. seaQuest DSV took viewers where few sci-fi shows had gone, the depths of the ocean, complete with high-tech submarines, political intrigue, and a talking dolphin. This wonderfully weird show imagined a future where humanity explores and colonizes the oceans instead of space. We followed the crew of the seaQuest DSV 4600, a naval submarine tasked with keeping peace. The series blended sci-fi and environmentalism with occasional detours into pure creature feature territory. seaQuest started strong but famously struggled with a changing tone across its 3 seasons, including an eventual pivot to full-blown science fantasy. Still, it's a beloved oddity that deserves way more credit for how imaginative it was. Earth 2. Earth 2 sets its sights on the final frontier, an alien planet where humanity hoped to hit the reset button after Earth became uninhabitable. This series followed a ragtag group of explorers as they crash-landed on this new world and tried to survive its strange creatures, mysterious diseases, and ancient secrets. It was a mix of survival drama, sci-fi mystery, and eco-conscious storytelling. Earth 2 had big ideas about humanity's future and our relationship with nature, but unfortunately, network struggles and behind-the-scenes drama kept it from hitting its full potential. It lasted just 1 season, but its unique vibe and strong cult following kept it alive in sci-fi memory. Sliders. Sliders was pure 90s sci-fi fun, a show built on one of the coolest concepts ever. What if you could travel to infinite parallel universes? Quinn Mallory accidentally invents sliding technology and, along with his friends, ends up bouncing between alternate Earths, where everything from politics and history to physics has gone sideways. Some worlds were hilarious, some were horrifying, and some were just plain weird. The early seasons balanced smart storytelling with a sense of adventure, though later seasons got a little messy thanks to cast changes and behind-the-scenes drama. Still, when Sliders was firing on all cylinders, it captured that thrilling anything-can-happen sci-fi spirit better than almost anything else on TV. Space Above and Beyond. Space Above and Beyond was the gritty, war-torn military sci-fi series you didn't know you needed. It imagined a future where humanity was locked in an all-out war with an alien race called the Chigs. The story followed a squadron of young space marines as they faced brutal battles, moral dilemmas, and personal demons across space and distant planets. Above and Beyond was darker and more grounded than a lot of 90s sci-fi, with heavy themes about loyalty, survival, and what it means to be human. Sadly, it only lasted 1 season, but it remains a cult classic for fans who like their sci-fi with a dose of emotional weight. Millennium. Millennium wasn't straight-up sci-fi at first glance, but under the hood, it was packed with dystopian dread, shadowy conspiracies, and apocalyptic vibes that leaned hard into speculative fiction. The show followed Frank Black, a former FBI profiler who could see into the minds of killers. Working with a mysterious group called the Millennium Group, Frank tackled everything from serial killers to biblical end-of-the-world scenarios. Set against the ticking clock of the approaching year 2000, Millennium captured the late 90s cultural anxiety like no other, making it a show absolutely worth revisiting. It was dark, stylish, and ahead of its time, even though its tonal shifts across seasons sometimes left audiences scratching their heads. Lexx. Buckle up, because Lexx is a weird ride. This cult hit was sci-fi at its most unhinged, and that's what made it unforgettable. The show followed a crew of outcasts flying around in a giant living spaceship while fleeing from corrupt governments, insane robots, and cosmic weirdness. Lexx blended low-budget visuals, dark comedy, sci-fi storytelling, and an unapologetically adult tone. One minute it was goofy, the next it was disturbingly bleak, and somehow it all worked. It didn't have the polish of other big 90s sci-fi series, but it had boldness and a sense that absolutely anything could happen next. Lexx is pure chaotic energy wrapped in fishnet tights and rubber monster suits. And honestly, it's a vibe. Earth Final Conflict. Earth Final Conflict hit the airwaves in the late 90s with a sleek near-future setting and a storyline that blended alien diplomacy with deep sci-fi intrigue. The series imagined a future where seemingly benevolent aliens arrive on Earth and offer humanity technology, medicine, and guidance. But, of course, their gifts came with strings attached. The show balanced espionage, rebellion, with philosophical questions, and had strong ideas about humanity's tendency to trade freedom for comfort, especially early on. It went through a lot of cast shakeups and tonal shifts over its 5 seasons, but when Final Conflict worked, it tapped into some seriously thoughtful sci-fi. A definite forgotten series that deserved a more stable run. Highlander, the Raven. Highlander the Raven was an attempt to spin the Highlander franchise, first mentioned in our Forgotten 90s Fantasy Shows video, in a new direction. And while it didn't reach the heights of the original series, it's still an interesting piece of late 90s sci-fi fantasy TV. This time, the story focused on Amanda, an immortal thief with centuries of complicated history, as she tried to turn over a new leaf and fight crime with the help of ex-cop Nick Wolf. The show seamlessly mixed sword fights, immortal politics, and a little crime of the week action. It had potential, but uneven writing and its short run meant it never fully found its footing. Still, for Highlander fans, The Raven is a forgotten chapter worth checking out. 7 Days. If you love time travel with a side of government conspiracy, 7 Days was pure 90s sci-fi goodness. The show's premise was simple but genius. Using alien technology recovered from Roswell, the US government developed a secret device that could send one person back exactly 7 days into the past to avert disasters. Enter Frank Parker, a wisecracking ex-Navy SEAL who had to stop everything from terrorist attacks to biological outbreaks, all while dodging bureaucratic red tape and his own personal baggage. 7 Days was a mix of action, humor, and high-stakes tension, wrapped in that perfect, weird late 90s syndication vibe. It didn't reinvent the genre, but it consistently delivered fun, fast-paced sci-fi adventures. Honorable mentions. Before we hit our final 90s sci-fi gem, let's give a quick shout-out to a few others that deserve some love. There's Space Precinct, where alien cops patrolled a futuristic Earth with some seriously wild makeup effects. Time Trax sent a future cop back to the 90s to hunt down rogue criminals. Tech War imagined a future overrun by virtual reality crimes and shady tech deals. Animorphs gave us teenagers who could morph into animals to fight a secret alien invasion. And The Tribe delivered a post-apocalyptic teen drama where all the adults are gone and kids rule the world. Each one brought its own weird and wonderful twist to 90s sci-fi TV. Farscape. Farscape was wild, colorful, and gloriously wacky, a complete breath of fresh air for sci-fi TV when it launched in 1999. The show centered on astronaut John Crichton, who gets sucked through a wormhole and ends up aboard a living ship full of alien fugitives. What followed was a chaotic, hilarious, emotional space opera that didn't look or feel like anything else on TV. Farscape mixed incredible puppetry, offbeat humor, complex character arcs, and genuinely groundbreaking world building. One episode might be a slapstick body swap comedy, the next could be an emotionally brutal exploration of trauma and loss. It never treated its audience like they couldn't handle weirdness, and because of that, it built a fiercely loyal cult following. If you missed Farscape, you missed one of the boldest sci-fi shows of its era. Do you agree with our picks for these forgotten 90s sci-fi shows? Are there any series you'd like to add to this list? Let us know in the comments. Check out our Forgotten Fantasy Show series for more underrated 90s gems, and don't forget to subscribe.